Alright, by popular request, I'm going to be analyzing convicted felon turned top model Jeremy Meeks. If you have time and you haven't heard his story, look him up. It's a very interesting and unique story. But he's clearly hyper attractive, so we'll see how ideal his measurements are. In terms of a harmony score, I will come out with a harmony score in this video, but take it with a grain of salt because measurements between different ethnicities and racial groups will vary. So, for example, in African subgroups, the nose width to mouth width ratio will be different. It will be lower because of a wider nose on average. So, I can't put the ideal ranges exactly for Jeremy because he's actually mixed, but just for entertainment's sake, and people want to see a number, so I will come out with a number. And just take it with a grain of salt. In a future video I may update that number based on if we analyze other faces. So let's begin with the side profile. And this is the best side profile I could find, really. So first you have to take a Frankfurt horizontal plane, and that plane has to be at about the top ear and cut through the orbital bone. So that is the plane there. And then we take a line perpendicular to that to measure if you are recessed technically, and you can see that he's not recessed because this line should pass the nasion, or the point of the nose here, and it aligns with the brow ridge as well. So overall he's not recessed. And in terms of brow ridge inclination, we can also measure that. He seems to have a more sloped back forehead. So we take another reference line here, and then we see how sloped back that is. It's about 27.4, so he has a very sloped back forehead, which obviously stems from a more prominent brow bone protrusion. His nasal frontal angle also looks highly masculinized. So overall his brow morphology is very masculine. That's 119.9. So not overly masculine, but also definitely classified as masculine. His nasal tip angle, we're going to be going through every single measurement to come out with a harmony score, so this will be a longer video. Is this assessment right here, and his is 128.4, which seems slightly high. The nasolabial angle, and this is another measurement that varies between ethnic groups, varies wildly actually. So even within the same racial group, different African subgroups may have different nasolabial angles. But Jeremy's is 91.6, which is in the ideal range. Facial convexity is how rounded his profile is, and his is 170.4, which is perfectly ideal. I think perhaps I found another side profile photo which might be better. I don't know if I can pull it up now. Alright. Just looking. Oh yeah, I found a better one, so let's restart. And that's this one. As you can see, it's just more front on, kind of. So let's exit this. Alright. So yeah, this one's more front on, I would say. They're both not perfect, but it's fine. That one was a little bit easier to work with because of the Frankfurt plane, but we'll do that again. So Frankfurt horizontal there, and then this line. So here he is actually recessed. So I think we will work with the other photo because if he's not recessed in one photo, it means this is the more accurate one, because it's not going to work in reverse, where if the photo is not distorted, it works to your favor. Or the photo is distorted, it works to your favor. So this one is the least distorted. I think it might have something to do with how close this photo was taken and the angle, but yeah, this one's fine to work with. It's not going to be 100% accurate, but not a big deal. His facial convexity at his nasion should be ideal as well, at 165 degrees, and that is ideal. His facial convexity with his nose, which is termed the total facial convexity, is 145.3, which again is ideal. In terms of nasal projection, take that this way. So how projected the nose is divided by how sloped back it is to this reference line, and that is 52 divided by 85.6, and that is perfectly ideal at 0.61. So his nose is perfectly protrusive. It's more feminized than some masculine faces, but not a big deal. And we can look at the nasal width to height ratio as well, and that just takes that same protrusion and measures it up to the eyes. So that's 52 divided by 48.7, and this is very high. So the point here is it's 1.07. The pleasant range in a Caucasian face is 0.68 to about 0.88 or 0.63 or so. So overall, what I'm trying to say is that his nose protrusion, how forward it is very high in terms of related to this. So his nose is very short in length. It should be a little bit longer. And we'll look at the lip assessments, which I think will vary in ethnicities as well, because different lip protrusion. So yeah, you can see that this is unideal, E line, and the same with H line, S line, and burstone line. So obviously, if I just said they're all unideal, he gets deducted a lot of points, which I don't think is really fair, because it doesn't make him unattractive. It fits within his ethnic group since he's mixed. So it looks like normal. It doesn't look like it's a flaw. And it looks a little bit better here, but still here it's unideal. So overall, I'm just going to say not ideal on the sheet, but just keep in mind, grain of salt. I can actually come out with a intuitive harmony score as well. So we'll see, we'll do both. Nasofacial angle here is perfectly ideal. So I think there are measurements that don't vary between like ethnic groups, and I think this is one of them, and it just shows that the relationship between the nose and the chin is good. Although I think it could vary, so not making a sweeping statement. And the nasomental angle is also perfectly ideal at 127.7. In terms of gonal angle, or the angle of his jaw, I already know that he has a very masculine dimorphic jaw, which means a low angle, and that is about 115 degrees or so. And I'll show you in another photo as well. So here it's 115.6, but as you can see here, the jaw is very squared and angular. And this is not going to be the best photo to measure because it's at an angle, but you can just see the general jaw shape. So for example, if it's 119 degrees here, which is more turned, it means that in a fully side-on photo, it's going to be lower than 119, which does make sense if it says 115 here. So we'll stick with that number. Say it's, to retake it real quick. So this is the Ramus length and the angle. 114.7, which is very masculinized, and it's similar to someone like Henry Cavill or Angelina Jolie even. And one thing we see is his ramus is extremely long. So we'll look at that ratio now. Got about 247. Extremely ideal and long ramus length. He has a perfect ratio of ramus to mandible at 0.7, which is the exact ideal 5 to 7 ratio. 5 divided by 7 is what comes out to about this. So this is his ramus and this is his mandible, and it is a perfect ratio of one another. And we'll look at how downturned his mandible is now. Seems ideal off first glance. So this is his mandible inclination, and we have to take it reference to this line. Drag it here, and it is 16.7, which is in the perfect ideal range. So overall, Jeremy has a very good side profile. His nasolabial angle is this angle here, and it is 126.1 degrees, which, if I take a quick glance, it is in the ideal range, so that's perfectly fine. I think we just switched photos, but oh yeah, for the jaw angle. And here we can see his submental cervical angle is 105.8, which is also ideal. It's not the most ideal, but it's not going to get deducted. It just means that he has his neck doesn't droop with like fat or skin. His gonion is below his mouth, or this point obviously, so he has a well-developed jaw. And we said that he's not recessed. Another good feature that he has is his orbital vector. If we can take a look at that real quick. See, his eye protrusion they're deep set, and he has bone that should protrude here. It's kind of hard to see, but yeah, it's not the best angle to see, but say is a slight positive orbital vector. So that's his side. Now, right now I'm going to come out with a harmony score. Okay, so I fixed the formula issue, and his side profile score comes out to a very high, actually. And this is by Caucasian standards, you have to remember. 85.4%, which is really high. And the fact is that if we're holding him up to Caucasian standards, he's not going to score as high as if he was held up to a mixed standard. Like, I don't think you could hold him up to a black standard either, it's really interesting how that works. But I think his score would be higher than this, even, which is really, really impressive. So that's his score, and we'll give an updated score after, like a possible score. So I'll explain that later on, but let's move on to the front profile now. So this photo is not really usable because, well, it kind of is, but I think there's a better photo of this one. So this one has no distortion because I think it's I don't know what you call them, the prison shot, whatever it's called. So first we'll look at his facial width height ratio. This was the least distorted photo, so it's going to have the most accurate measurements. And this was 1.94, which is perfectly idealized and compact. So that is a compact and ideal facial width height ratio. In terms of neck width, that is clearly ideal, so I'll just mark that. And in terms of jaw width, we take this point at the gonion. A little bit lower here at the mouth line should be, because he has a low gonion. So 372.7. And it's already ideal, I can tell. Yeah, 89%, so he doesn't have an overly wide jaw, but it's perfectly wide and ideal at 89% of cheekbone width. His chin to philtrum ratio looks ideal, but let's check it out. So we divide this chin measurement by this philtrum measurement, 84.7 divided by 38.8, and that's perfectly ideal. So his chin is 2.18 times his philtrum, so he has exceptionally high facial harmony so far. In terms of forehead width, I can already tell you that it's ideal, but let's just measure it for the sake of it. So 344.1, and it's 82%, which is perfectly ideal. So yeah, I'm just gonna skip that. In terms of total facial width to height ratio, we take a look at how long his face is, and we divide that in full frame here. So how long this measurement is divided by how wide it is. And I think he does have an ideal face shape, so we'll just confirm that. 537.9. And his face is a little bit more compact than ideal, actually. 1.28 times taller than it is wide, and ideally it should be about 1.35. So his face is a little bit more rounded, and actually that does kind of make sense. It looks a little bit better in this photo, but I think this has some slight distortion. As you can tell, the eyes are a little bit larger and the face a little bit longer. So okay, so the next thing we'll look at is how high the cheekbones are. So we take the widest part of the face here and an eye line, interpupillary line, and we measure how high this line is compared to that one. So 150.6 divided by 190.13. And he has pretty high cheekbones, 79.2%. Anything above 81 is really high, but this is still like moderately high cheekbones. He doesn't have the highest cheekbones, which is quite interesting considering he's a model. In this photo they do look higher, but overall I don't think he has the highest cheekbones we've seen. So not a flaw at all though. Alright, now we'll look at his mouth width to nose width ratio. 161 divided by 123.7, which I know is not going to be in the Caucasian ideal, but when I give you the updated score at the end, I can tell you that this is ideal. So 1.3 times his nose width, which is ideal in a different ethnic variation group. Not even just black people, but a lot of other ethnicities as well, like Indians, or they have wider nose shapes, so it looks perfectly harmonious with his face. In terms of facial thirds, we'll see. So just make markings here. So upper third, middle third, and lower third. Lower is 201.56. And the middle is 186.13. And the upper third, you can see he has a hairline, 151.4, so he's not bald. and his facial thirds are very interestingly proportioned. So upper third is very short at 28.1%. Middle third is 34.5%, and his lower third is the largest, which is ideal, at 37.4. So he has a very typical masculinized dimorphic facial third distribution. As you can see, they stray pretty far from 1/3. As you can see, 28 is about 4.9 degrees away from 1/3. So not ideal in that respect, but the split itself is ideal. So he does have a bigger, more masculine jaw. And I'll just log these measurements for the score. So overall, he's scoring very highly, and I think that that's expected. And his lower third facial proportion looks perfectly ideal as well. We divide this lower third to the mid lip. 69.2 divided by this. And that should be 34. So his is 34.35%, which is ideal. Even though he has a shorter philtrum, it still is ideal. Because his chin shape and his chin proportions are very, very harmonious. It's probably one of his strongest assets. Okay, so his lower lip to upper lip proportion also looks ideal. And that is 48.3 divided by 33.8. And that is ideal at 1.43 times the upper lip. He's fitting Caucasian standards pretty well, which he obviously is mixed, so I guess it kind of makes sense. In terms of eye spacing, he has ideal eye spacing, obviously. Eye spacing is one of the most crucial components to an attractive face, and his is no exception at 46.5% of facial width, which is almost exactly at the benchmark ideal point, which is 46%, but he's definitely in the ideal range. In terms of mid-face ratio, this might be slightly unideal. He has a very compact mid-face, and we divide that line by this, 189.4, and that is 1.03. So his mid-face is more compact, but I would still say this is ideal. So I'm not going to deduct for this. In terms of eye spacing, one eye apart, let's see that 95 and it's about 101.6. Here's a little bit less actually. 95 and 96.6. And that's ideal for sure. So his eyes are almost one eye apart. It's about 0.95 to 0.98, but no deduction here. Perfect. So overall, I think of the 22 men I've analyzed, including Henry Cavill and others, he has at least up there the best eye spacing. So he has the best eye spacing and mid-face ratio combination of all the men, I think, or at least he's top 3. There are some others that are very good as well, like Henry Cavill has very good proportions there, and clearly that makes a very attractive face. So there's no surprise there. And in terms of eye tilt, I can already tell you it's ideal. We'll look at it here since it's better quality and easier to see. So in terms of eye tilt, canthal tilt, 8.2, and here 8, so 8.1 degrees, which is upturned and perfectly ideal. that is a perfectly ideal canthal tilt. Next, we'll see his eye aspect ratio. So how wide his eyes are divided by how tall. 92.9 divided by 31. I can tell you that's ideal. So he has an exact, not even approximate, but exact 3:1 ratio. So his eyes are 3:1, 3 times wider than they are tall. And you can see that produces a very striking, narrow eye shape, but not overly so, so it still looks good. In terms of how low his brows are, you can see that they are low. Maybe not the lowest we've seen, but they're pretty low. And that is this measurement divided by the eye height, 12.3 divided by 31. And that's definitely below 0.5. So 0.4. His eyebrows are 0.4 eye heights to his eye line, above his eye line. So that is low set and ideal. Overall, he has exceptional facial harmony so far. In terms of eyebrow tilt, that also looks ideal. They're not too upturned. His eyebrows themselves are a flaw though, because as you can see, I'll just show you after this, but so 11.3 and 8. So that's ideal. And we've already noted in our past videos how women tend to have more upturned eyebrows than men. So his eyebrows are 9.7 average, which is perfect. It's not too upturned and it's not flat. So overall great eyebrows in terms of tilt. But the one issue I was going to note is that you can see how far his eyebrows start. They start about into the eye, which is not ideal. They should extend at least to this inner eye corner, but you can see in some faces it even goes here. It depends on your eye spacing, but his eye spacing is ideal, so there's no reason for him to have eyebrows this far apart, unless he obviously can't grow in the middle, but he would look better with closer together eyebrows, because it just elongates the eyebrow shape and just looks more youthful in general. And you can tell that if the eyebrows extend more here, it makes the eyebrows lower to the eyes. Okay, so all of that is ideal. The last two things before we get a score is the jaw inclination. So we'll look at that right now, and I could tell you that's ideal for sure. So this angle right here. And just do it more accurately. This is definitely the longest video I've done. So 86.2 degrees, which is exactly in the ideal range. And the ideal range is about 84.5 to 95 degrees. So a jaw that's neither too downturned or too flat. And we can see how that harmonizes with his midface. It's an exact or near exact 1-to-1 match. So 88. So that's perfectly ideal. And yeah, only a 1 to 2 degree deviation. So check mark on that. Alright, let's come out with a Caucasian standard harmony score of all the faces we've analyzed, and then I'll show you a more adjusted harmony score. So let me do the frontal profile score right now, and I'll just note the flaws as I go. So neck width, perfectly ideal, no deduction. Jaw width, no deduction. Chin to philtrum ratio, ideal. Forehead width is perfect. His face shape, or his total facial width to height ratio, was slightly unideal, so that's a tier 3 score. So he gets a bit of a deduction for that. Facial width to height ratio was ideal. His cheekbones, a slight deduction. They're not the highest set. Mouth width, I'm not going to deduct for that, even in a Caucasian standard, just because I know it's ideal for sure. Facial thirds, let's see. So his facial thirds deviate 4.4%, but they are ideally distributed, so that's a tier 2 score. It's still pretty good. Lower third proportion is ideal. His lips were ideal. Mid-face ratio ideal. And his eye separation and eye spacing were both ideal. Canthal tilt was ideal. Eye shape ideal. Eyebrow tilt, eyebrows were low, and everything else was perfect. So now we divide that by the total possible score. And his harmony score is very close to his side actually, so 87.3%. So this is his front harmony score in a Caucasian standard, which is exceptionally high. It's much higher than most faces even. And in the side it was about 85.4. So let me tell you a total harmony score now. So I have to combine them. So the side is weighted 39% approximately. So we take 85% and then we multiply it by 39% about, and then we add that to the front weight, which is 61%, and we multiply that by the front score. So his total score of quote-unquote Caucasian harmony is 86.6%, and that would score 10th. So he would score 10th among 23 faces that isn't even technically his own ethnicity. So that's very impressive actually. Now let me come out with a adjusted harmony score. So to do that, I'll just change some of the scores that I think would be more ideal in a mixed average system, like a mixed, if I analyzed 22 average mixed race men, this would be a score. So the main things I'm going to adjust are his lip assessments. So I'm going to give him all ideal there. And the last lip assessments. Okay, that's it. So that's all I adjusted. And that brings his side profile harmony score to a 95.7%, which is the second highest, or the third highest side profile score after Theo James and Matt Bomer. So that's exceptionally high. And people like to say that he doesn't have a good side profile, but it is very harmonious. It's a very harmonious side profile. There's minimal flaws. Especially accounting for ethnicity, he doesn't really have any flaws in the side. His only real flaw was that his brow ridge his forehead's a little bit too sloped back. Now we'll adjust the front profile score. So in the front view, I want to change, not much actually, but actually there is nothing to change in the front. That would be influenced by different ethnicities. Everything is already mostly ideal. Yeah, so I couldn't give him an improvement there. It's all ideal anyway. Facial thirds don't really change much. Cheekbone high-settedness doesn't change much. And total facial width to height ratio was his only other flaw. So his total harmony score is a 90.6%. 0.6%. And this is adjusted. So this would be adjusting for ethnicity. And the only thing I adjusted were his lip assessments in the side profile. As you can see, depending on ethnicity, he has more protrusive lips. Very common. So I can't really deduct for that. So his adjusted harmony score is a 90.6%. And that is 4th. So he would score 4th among the faces we've analyzed. So yeah, that was a very interesting analysis. Probably the best one I've done personally. I enjoyed doing it. So keep suggesting faces, and that's all for this one.